All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. All members are present. So there is no additions to the agenda. There's not. We will move on to the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion. Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Gerald. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. No public comment, so we will move on to the consent agenda.
Carol? I was in and out of the bills and it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just back to school stuff, lots and lots of little Italy pencils, pens, whiteboards replacements. I mean, it's a lot of, there's a long list to go through, but it's all normal activity.
From the personnel consent agenda items, you'll see the remaining staff that have been hired to make us full staff for the school year. And other than that, I would just stand for any other questions.
For motion approved.
Make a motion approved.
Motion by Gerald,
I'll second.
second by Jacob. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We have 2 communication items. Administrative report. Okay.
I will link this in for board members. I was struggling with my pictures uploading. So I had them on my phone, I put them on, so I apologize, but they are here. So I want to share this with you because let me share. Administrative report. That'll make it a little bit bigger for everybody's benefit, including mine. So this week is our kickoff to our back to school. So our staff were in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today, thank you to Cheryl and Rachel welcoming the staff on behalf of the board. So thank you for that. But we spent a lot of time this morning really integrating the core values of our strategic plan into the work that we do. And I think one of the messages that I really tried to bring home is that the strategic plan is not something new. It's not just this initiative. It's not something that is this earth-shaking work, but it really does provide structure to all the work that we're doing. And as we talked about bringing forward the strategic plan's values, the staff really had an opportunity to, so here's just a couple of pictures in action. They broke into their birth months. It's really funny. We have a lot of August birthdays on our staff, like a lot of August birthdays on our staff. And we have like 4 October birthdays across the whole staff. It was so interesting. Poor Mike Gunther was sitting there by himself for a long time in October. And I was like, do I have to pretend I was born in October? Sorry. It was really a fun activity. Okay, I think it was fun. But the energy throughout the room was really positive and uplifting. And so these are just a couple of pictures I tried to snap of everybody so that you could kind of see the work that they were doing. And then what we did is at the tail end, all of the staff had brought forward what these values look like in action. You know, what does this look like in our hallways? And what does this look like in our classrooms? And they got to share that out. And they got to talk about, in addition to what it looks like, they talked about the very real barriers that can take place and what keeps us from having courageous conversations when something isn't going the way that we want it to be going. What does it look like to lead and live with integrity within our school district? So it was a really, again, I'm going to recognize and own, like, I'm biased in this whole thing because I thought it was a really good exchange, but I sit back and watch the energy and I watch the engagement. And at this point in the day, people weren't twiddling away. So I was pretty excited about that. The next thing that they did is they really engaged in conversation about our strategic priorities. And again, this was really just reinforcing a lot of the work that we already do and we have been doing over the course of the last couple of years, just how it's going to help us really achieve our high expectations for students and how our high quality staff are going to continue to grow through our professional developments and opportunities that we have. So it was, I thought, a fun morning. And I add that caveat because I think it's a fun day. It's kind of like saying which of your children is your favorite day, your favorite children, which day at school is your favorite day, this is one of them for sure. It's a good thing I only have 2 kids. So couple of reminders. The calendar for the 26-27 school year again has 2-hour late starts. We are grateful to the community to support this for our staff, because it really does provide an opportunity for them to use those professional learning communities and those and the designated professional development time. And so I know that a late start for kids is exciting, but I also recognize that it does add some dynamics for families. So just want to say thank you for that continued opportunity. One of the things that we are going to be talking about this year is how trauma impacts students within our communities. Trauma-informed schools and really trauma-informed staff is a conversation that's been happening for years, and it's come up through our staff that sometimes they just don't know how to respond when students have really high needs. And so it's an opportunity that we have to make sure that they have the tools and the resources to meet the needs of all the kids in our community. I always will leave in a plug about the application for educational benefits, what used to be called the free and reduced form. Why, again, that is so important is because that form is a determination of multiple forms of funding for our school district. It also helps to make a determination of what the state of Minnesota is reimbursed from the federal government for the meals that are provided to all students in the state. And so it's really important that families fill out that application for educational benefits, even if they think they won't qualify. Okay, so sometimes I think families will not access benefits that they might be eligible for. And just because they fill out the form doesn't necessarily mean that they have to access any type of a benefit, but it would mean that our school district could receive funding. Okay.
Remind us how that information is protected.
Say that for me one more time.
Remind us how that information is protected.
So all of that information is processed by one individual in the district. So when the forms go, if they get turned into the elementary school or the secondary school, they all go over to the district office, and we only have one person that is the keeper of that information.
That's the biggest reason people tell me they don't fill it out. Because in the system, they believe all their information will be all over everywhere.
It isn't, and I can just speak to, I don't see that information either. Like I have pretty wide credentials across the district, and I don't see that information when I log into a system. So, okay. And then last thing is just our new staff orientation took place on Thursday, August 12th. So it's a fun time of year, and it's really there's good energy throughout the building. And now we can just get kids back and start us off. So that's my administrative report for today that I will share with you all. The revenues and expenditures have been updated. As you take a look at those, they're pretty minimal because we are very early in the year. But Amanda and I have had conversations about how to bring you that data and slice it a couple of different ways to just make that a little bit more, consumable for board members. I do want to go back one more time to my administrative report because I have to go down one page. I did pull a snapshot of enrollment from last week. I did commit to making sure that our enrollment is at the forefront of our conversation as we look at where our numbers are. Our early childhood special education numbers are at 19, which is a pretty strong number for us. Kindergarten, as it sat last week, was at 46. If you remember, we were targeting 50. Okay. You'll see the other classes are fairly stable to where they have been. And this total cumulative number for us is 857 kindergarten through 12th grade students. Okay. So there's that information that I wanted to circle back to.
Moving on to committee organizational reports. I know the policy committee met early August, but we'll go through that stuff later on the agenda. Hearing nothing else. No old business. Moving on to new business. We'll start off with the Bulldog Booster Club presentation.
So I will invite up Eric and Joe, come on up. You guys can have a seat. We've been having conversation. So the Bulldog Booster Club, I know many people are aware of, but the Bulldog Booster Club has kind of rejuvenated, I would say, over the last couple of years. And as we've highlighted donations over the course of time, I've said time and time again how grateful we are. So I'll take this opportunity to just say thank you. What you provided for our school is does not go without notice, because many things we wouldn't be able to do without your funding. So thank you for that. On that note, I just want to extend an invitation to them to share some ideas and thoughts that they have about building some capacity in our gyms. So you guys want to just take it away?
Yeah, I'm Eric Lenz. I'm the president of the Booster Club, and this is Joe Bertram. I'd call him, I mean, he's a member and then sort of the president of our scoreboard committee, which I'll kind of get to. Just most of you probably have at least an idea of what we do, but since 2024, we've formed a 501c3. So we're a charity organization. We provide funding with the goal of just providing better experiences, better quality equipment, and things like that for all athletes in Paynesville schools. So it's not just dedicated to one sport, and we're very we try to make sure that we support girls sports and boys sports equally. The way our process works is basically we have meetings once a month. Coaches come to us with their requests, and we've been in a great position where we've been able to contribute. I think $63,000 is what we've contributed since 2024. We also do the Hall of Fame annual banquet, which we give awards to like the male female athlete of the year, coach of the year, and a Bulldog award also. That's another one of our fundraisers. So that's always a good time as well, and induct, a couple Hall of Famers. So that's just kind of a little background. And now we have been looking into this for kind of since we started. The scoreboards in the gym, probably there since I played in the 90s. I'm not positive. But as we go around to other schools, you see the trend is video scoreboards, basically a giant TV. Some schools, probably 10 years ago or so, they would do kind of a similar scoreboard as what we have now, but then there's at least player stats on the side so you can keep track of points and things like that. But now, talking to these companies that we've met with, everybody's just going video because it provides, a better game day experience. You can have hype videos before the game. You can do advertising. Some schools utilize it for during halftime or timeouts. There's a commercial, like a full length commercial for businesses in town. So, it would provide additional revenue. But we also just like it just because it does provide that better game day experience. You go to some of these gyms that have these big scoreboards, there's a wow factor. When the kids really take advantage of it and use make hype videos or just introduction videos for starting lineups and stuff, pretty cool. So we've met with Daktronics and Watchfire. And Daktronics, you've probably heard of. They're, all the pro sports teams. That's kind of the company that provides those scoreboards. Watchfire would be probably the next biggest competitor from what we could tell. But when we got bids from them, it's about half the cost with Watchfire. And they're not just some, small company either. They do have the National Hockey Center, the Herb Brooks Hockey Center at St. Cloud State. They just put a giant new video scoreboard in there. Concordia St. Paul is another one that has it. So it's not like it's, just some tiny little company. But we, our intention is that we would like to move forward, but we also don't want to waste our time if the school board wouldn't be on board with us making that donation, whether or not we donate as, the funds and then the school buys the scoreboard, or we just coordinate with the company to have it installed. So that's our biggest thing tonight, is that we just want to make sure we're not wasting our time, because Joe especially has spent a lot of time on this, meeting with the companies, and they've done site visits. And I think Janelle maybe provided, I don't know if you provided like the Watchfire did, provided some, so you can get an idea. The North scoreboard would probably be the 16 by 9. And then the cafeteria side would be a 6x10, so it's a little smaller, but yeah, the big one. And I think they'd actually be flip-flopped compared to how they are now, as far as which side they're on. So that you want the best viewing for the home fans, but anyways, it's a total cost. I mean, the bid we got from Watchfire was $87,000. There could be some additional costs there. We need to have them come out and just verify some compatibility with like the scoreboard, or not the scoreboard, the shot clock, and probably our sound system, just to make sure, it's all compatible. But again, we don't want to move forward with that without knowing that we would have the support of the school board. And, obviously it provides a great game day experience and it benefits athletics, but at the same time, it can be used for graduation ceremonies, I suppose movie night, if community ed was going to do something like that, any sort of presentation during the school day. I mean, it's a giant TV. You can use it for a lot of different things. And some of the companies both emphasize that, there's an educational component that can be utilized with this too, because if you have a class geared towards marketing or something, a kid could learn about, if whether or not it's in coordination with the booster club or through school, but we envision as they could help go to businesses to work on commercials or to get sponsorships and things like that, where they could see an educational benefit to it as well. I know with the Bulldog Sports Network that is no longer right now, but hopefully with something like this, it may drive some interest from a teacher that may want to get involved in something like that. So there is an aspect that's not athletic to it that the school could utilize. So, and I'm trying to think any other.
Yeah, and Watchfire does have like scholarship opportunities for kids that would be involved in content creation and doing all that stuff. That's not a mandatory thing, but that's just things that they can do. They can get jobs in colleges running scoreboards if they're interested.
And I think the way they described it is like the students would have a pretty easy time probably creating their own little videos. I'm not the greatest technological person, but it makes it seem like it'd be pretty easy for them to upload those onto the screen and share them and all those things. So, but that's another aspect of we're going to get a better feel for that if we go spend the time and visit these sites to see it, but we don't want to do it if we're wasting our time. And we would also like to, get the word out in the community that that's something we're doing if anybody wants to donate. But the joke we always have as a booster club is we don't want to have a take a dive in 95 scenario. If anybody remembers that, we always question where our money went. So we want to make sure that if we're promoting it, that it's actually something that's going to move forward and we're going to do it.
So, so the reason I guess that we talked about having a presentation and traditionally we would have had this at a work session and it just didn't work into schedules, but we thought it's better to be here and have just an informational conversation. Just so that one, again, I respect your time and efforts and energy, and I understand why you would like to know if the school district would entertain that conversation. We've had a number of conversations about some of the logistic items if it progresses. So there's a number of steps that need to be addressed along the way. But it's really understanding from a board's perspective, are there concerns that you have or questions that you have that you would like the booster club to answer?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that you could move one of the scoreboards for like graduation or something in the back center? Is it those wouldn't be mobile?
No, they're too big. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of Legos. They just screw them all together.
Yeah, they're
little.
I kind of figured that. So
Yeah, they are. It's a giant screen, but they are individual panels. So they do give you.
I've seen them. They're nice. No,
Yeah, they do, but they do give you extra panels, is our understanding. So like, if there's a baseball practice in there and somebody breaks a panel, it's not the whole screen is done for you. Just replace one panel and they just click back in, I guess.
I was just curious on the flexibility of.
Yeah.
We do the graduations now in the back, and I kind of figured it'd be a lot of work to take that down.
But speaking of moving scoreboards, I guess I have it in here. Like one thing we'd maybe ask is that the school is in charge of doing whatever they want with the old scoreboards. Disposing them, or, I mean, I leave the middle, well, I always call it the middle school gym, but I think the gymnastics gym, I feel like a lot of that is, some of those bulbs are burnt out and they're not fully working. So maybe, they could be moved. I'm not sure, but it's, some of those details can get worked out. Just like, I know, Janelle and I discussed this, that, the revenue side of it down the road, would need to be addressed. I mean, we don't need to reach an agreement today or anything like that. That's not the point of this, but, there's revenue that comes in from it. The school owns the scoreboard. So I think the school board association told you those sorts of things should have, there should be agreements in place. And, I mean, at the end of the day, our main goal is that the revenue that comes in is for athletics, whether or not it funnels completely through us or some goes, we can hash those details out, but at the end of the day, it benefits all sports. So I don't think that would be a controversial thing. It's just an agreement that needs to be in place so everybody has the understanding, and it's not 20 years later and nobody knows what's supposed to happen with these revenues or whatever.
What was your timeline for, if you could wave your wand, what was your timeline that you're hoping for?
Yesterday. Yeah. So last time we talked to them, I think they said basically if we say yes, it's like an 8-week. If miraculously we'd get a few other donations or something, there would be a time frame between volleyball and basketball this year that could still be an option. That's probably too aggressive. But spring would be the ideal time, really, because there's nothing really using it in the spring. We'd have, as a group, time to play around with it, get fully prepared for the volleyball season in the fall. But I think the actual install, they said, was like just a couple days or something.
So how much short are you?
What's that?
How much short are you?
Well,
Complete your funds, I understand.
yeah. So I mean, we're not far away. But at the end of the day, like our main goal is to be able to continue to make requests or grant requests. We don't want to, all of a sudden just spend it all on a scoreboard, and then for the next year when people want tournament fees or uniforms or whatever, and we just have to say, sorry, you got a scoreboard. So we want to make sure that we have those funds still available.
I changed it in a different word. How many miles away are you? I mean, are you thinking 40,000? 50,000?
Yeah, I would say 40,000 would be fair. That would give us the cushion. We're at a kind of a weird time of year right now where we're having money come in for different things, and we have a meeting tomorrow night, and that's where we're gonna, somewhat discuss like where are we comfortable, like how much do we have to have, when we're willing to pull the trigger.
And I probably shouldn't ask that.
No, that's fine, and some of it is we do need to. I mean, that bid for 87,000. It's not exact at this point. I mean, that is exact if they just come in, put the boards up.
Yeah.
But we don't know for sure yet if it's compatible.
Compatibility.
The wiring, we believe we maybe have somebody who's willing to donate the electrical part of it. So yeah, it won't be more than, I mean, I can't imagine it'll be under 100 for the total cost.
I mean, like everything though, I mean, prices, this was quoted
yeah, who knows?
numerous months ago, so it could all be different.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a cost come back to this. For me, it's very interesting to look at, but it'll all come down to the numbers to now. If we have to do a sound system, what's that gonna cost?
So
As far
I
as
think,
graduation, I'd love to see the graduation back in the gymnasium so people can hear what's going on. I haven't heard of graduation in 3 years. Nobody had talked to that. And when we built that, we didn't ever intend it to be in that center. We intended it to be there. And so I think Ron's question, we can be used for graduation, probably it would be really nice. But the reality is if you guys think it's 40 or 50, and then we in our budget, because we're looking at a budget year that you've already budgeted, have 10 or 15 or whatever it is, when would we have a number to be able to go to the public and see if somebody wants to make some donations? that would be what,
So one of the things I also think that I heard, and I think that we probably won't know until if we say yes, move forward and get more information for us if we're interested. I think one of the things we need to know is when they come out and look at it, what is our electrical compatibility in our space that it is? So we know how much additional things would be necessary from the district's perspective for them to essentially plug and play. Does that make sense? So I don't know that we have that information.
I would think that would be something. But if these guys are looking for something that we're interested, I for myself can say, I think we should look at it. I mean, we have nothing in the school that's gonna wear out sooner or later.
Right.
And I am guessing those scoreboards are original. Probably from when I was a kid,
Yeah, I would say that.
and it was only,
They've always been there.
yeah, we
They're in
were,
the late seventies.
Yeah.
They're in the
But-
late seventies, and I was.
As far as like the shot clocks and speakers,
Yeah.
that'll all work like it does today.
We
We
just
just
had,
thought it would be nice to have everything entwined into the new scoreboards. But if we would say, you know, we want to leave the shot clocks, they would definitely work like they do today. It just, if you're doing something, you might as well.
the other thing is, my impression is that you're gonna, I'm not a techie guy either, but you're gonna run it from a system through a television, which means that if the state of, or the state athletic group decides they want different stuff on the scoreboard, it wouldn't be that you couldn't buy something and that would be the new view that you would see. Am I reading that correct?
Right.
So it would open up the door up to kind of accommodate everybody. Could that mean that it could be slightly different scoring system depending on what's going on? Girls volleyball. So it would do all that, which would be more coordinated.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I think it would come down to the cost and where we're at on a budget here.
There's a lot of different like ways you can display the scoreboard too. So yeah, for wrestling, it could show one thing, volleyball. So it's all controlled by either a laptop or an iPad, essentially, is how it's described. It's pretty
It's
easy.
just a big monitor. It's really.
Yeah, but with like, if you have a, I think it, basically the way they showed it is like for volleyball games, you just open up the volleyball file and then you know, if there's a good block, you can hit block and then the number of the player and then it'll, you know, their picture might flash, you know, their photo could flash on there. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. But, you know, you were kind of mentioning from a budget perspective, you know, we're not necessarily, you know, obviously we would love it if the school would kick in some for it, but that's not like necessarily what we're looking for today. It's somewhat just, we don't want to waste our time if we move forward and come back to you with the final number that you're not going to just say, well, no, we never wanted to do this sort of thing. And I think cost moving forward, I mean, there wasn't a subscription.
There's no additional fees. I mean, unless you want to add the curriculum. And
Sure.
Yeah, there's a annual fee for like a curriculum but that was only like $2,500 a year or something. It's not like a major thing. And like, you know, the software updates are free and I think is that one a 10-year warranty?
Yeah, 10 years.
We go to a lot of sporting events and all of the schools around us have done something similar. And it's interesting because you can see so much more on those boards and they can communicate with the whole crowd through the boards. And I, for one, think it's a great idea. I've been approached by many people in the sporting community. Said, wouldn't it be nice if we had one of those? And I really think it's the next step towards the jumbotron that I want.
Have to raise the ceiling. I think it's a great idea too. The only thing, I hope we don't limit ourselves, because I thought we talked a few years ago about updating our sound system. Yeah, but I'd like to see us spend a little extra money and do it right.
the sound system was updated in the gym. In the high school gym. Actually, the Booster Club. Yeah, we had a donation that came through the volleyball program and that was updated in the high school
It's
gym.
just in the back.
So the PAX is not, yes, we're talking two separate spaces. The PAC has not been updated. Yes,
Yeah,
More issues than just speakers.
correct.
and
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as, we would, like I said, we would like to be able to spread the word and basically start requesting donations from the community if anybody has any interest. And we just don't want to do that without knowing that it's a realistic thing that we're going to accomplish, which financially, from our perspective, it's very realistic that we're going to be able to get this done by spring. We believe. So,
Fingers crossed.
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I read the information that that we got on it, and it looked interesting to me. Everything, stuff isn't gonna last. It's a whole kind of a different world anyway. And I'm guessing the scoreboards are original, because the school was built, what, 1969 here?
70.
1970? And I graduated unfortunately in 1935 with your dad. And I suspect it's the same scoreboards with maybe an addition on it. And the doctors tell me I might have need some repairs. No.
So, yeah, if anybody else, has any questions after this, feel free to reach out to me or Joe. We'll be happy to answer them.
So how do we move forward? Just give the.
This, it's just a nod. It's really just a nod to hear, and they just needed to hear it. This doesn't require an official
Oh,
vote
right, yeah,
because we're not officially accepting any donation. It really is just giving them the nod to go ahead and continue to gather information. And as board members, you would be comfortable with them coming back to us when they know more information to say, all right, here's the real deal. Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, with that, we move on to the Paynesville Area Schools Handbook.
So the handbooks are presented as they were reviewed at the work session. I have not received any questions or comments.
Make a motion to approve the 2027 Paynesville Area Schools Handbooks.
I'll
as
second.
presented.
Motion by Bruce, second by Carol, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the policy first reading.
So the policy committee, would you like me to?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
please.
So the policy committee reviewed a number of policies. And what you're going to see are a few notes here. And I'll kind of walk through, them pretty generally when there's not a lot of significant changes to the policies. So the disability non-discrimination policy had really minimal changes with regards to who to contact, and it was updating legal references. The policy 423, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about because this policy would be new for the school district. And I'm going to pull it up so we can do a little review on this one. All right. So this policy is really about employee and student relationships. Where this is coming from and why this is coming to the board now, this has been a policy recommendation from MSBA for a number of years. As you will see that MSBA's policy originated in 1999, okay? For whatever reason, our district has not had this policy as a formal adopted policy. I will suggest that this has just been the ongoing expectation. What has come to the table is legislation in Minnesota that is specifically around what legislators have defined as grooming, which is where a person of authority uses their authority to engage in an inappropriate relationship with a student. This policy is where MSBA has addressed the grooming legislation. So because of that, my recommendation is that the board adopts this policy. Okay, so that's where this is coming from, and that's why it's here. Okay, I'm going to pause for any questions. Are there any questions about this one?
And it's coming right from MSBA.
Right from MSBA.
And obviously led us the right direction.
Next, we also have some revisions to The student discipline policy. So we started this conversation, and within this policy, there's a section where principals need to have a very prescriptive definition of how how a student removal will take place. One of the things that when we met as a policy committee that we talked about is that when you have things in policy, that's the way it has to be. And so we've reviewed a number of other school district policies to determine how prescriptive are you in your procedures? Are you very specific and explicit, or are you more vague? There's pros and cons to both sides. So what we've really wanted our principals to do is have extensive conversation together to make sure that they can make a recommendation for the specific procedures for a removal from class. I do expect board members that this policy is going to come to you probably every year for a couple of years. We've seen a pendulum shift on this policy over the course of time when it comes to student removals from class. Okay, so I think it's going to come to us more often for discussion and review. But that's why at this point in time, the policy committee, so they reviewed it, but they are not making a recommendation for approval yet as the principals continue to work on the policy.
So as it looks right now, is that what MSBA has recommended for this?
So the areas that, yep, so the
And
areas.
we're looking at maybe changing that?
No, we have to add portions in. MSBA's policy says you must insert district-specific procedures here. Okay? So that's the change. Okay? Student disability non-discrimination policy, verbiage was added for reasonable accommodation. You're gonna see a staff one that's similar. Essentially what this is saying is that if the district does not engage in a conversation when a student asks for a reasonable accommodation, we are in a vulnerable position, is what that's suggesting. The internet technology and cell phone acceptable use policy, part of where this is coming from is also legislation that came through this year. Again, this is something that I would think is common sense. Unfortunately, it is not. So here we sit with policy. But students cannot use applications that will nudify. I didn't know that was a word, but it is a word that will nudify another student or a staff or a whomever. So it is a prohibition of those applications. The social media policy has been a policy that the board has reviewed and implemented, and the policy committee reviewed that, and they're not making any recommended changes to that, but it was up for a 3-year cycle review. Okay, this is, Bruce, a policy that was specific to Paynesville area schools. Okay. Hazing prohibition, there are no changes. It was reviewed, but there are no changes, so the recommendation would be to adopt it without change. The Pledge of Allegiance, there were also no recent updates, so the recommendation is to adopt with no changes. Investment policy, oops, I've missed my red edits. There are no recommended changes, so the recommendation would be to accept with no changes. The student transportation policy, there were minimal, there was verbiage added to define school bus. And so the recommendation was to approve the policy with the changes as they were proposed. So the uniform grant guidance policy is one where the board, we went back and forth on a couple of different recommendations from MSBA. And so you will see that this also is going to be tabled and discussed at the same time with the discipline policy, because there's some language around threshold for authorized expenditures, and then having some expenditure conversation around what staff can purchase and not purchase. So what we, at the onset, we thought, well, it seemed pretty cut and dried. And then as we had more conversation through the business office and district and really understanding the bills that come forward and when those bills are paid, we have some programs that it would exceed the threshold that's recommended. So we wanted to have conversation about that before just changing the recommended threshold. And many school districts also are given, MSBA says school districts can choose to adopt that section or not. So that was some further conversation that we wanted to have before making a recommendation. Why this is a big policy is because this is what governs our federal money. Okay, the Uniform Grant Guidance Program is all about federal money. The state then comes in and says, well, if you do this for federal, you should do this for state too. So they go together, but we wanted to have a little bit more conversation. And so we reviewed it. So I wanted to be honest and transparent that we reviewed it, but the board, the policy committee was not ready to make a recommendation on that one. The public data and data subject request policy. There were so the safe at home participants, what that is in Minnesota, well, when somebody does a public data request, there's information that has to be released. And the safe at home provision really is about creating a safety net for people, victims of domestic violence. And so if somebody has is in a, we'll just say they come to Paynesville to have a safe haven and a place to live, that's their spouse, ex-spouse, significant other, whatever the case might be, could have requested their mailing address and things that are associated with the children. This policy makes it so that we are able to only report the safe at home address, which is a protection for victims of domestic violence. It's part of, it's very much legislatively driven, but our policy reflects that language. Okay. And then the crisis management policy. So what has been updated here are minor edits, and then the edits that are there as resource. So this model cardiac emergency response plan, that's a plan that the district has to have. And if you remember when we reviewed this a couple of years ago, it said districts may use the MDE model contract, but it's not out yet. Well, now it's out. Okay. So we are intending to update the cardiac emergency response plan annually, but it won't necessarily come to the board annually because it's responsive to things such as who is CPR certified, who is first aid certified. Those things aren't necessarily board approved. They don't need to be, but the plan in its the structure that it meets the requirements for our cardiac emergency response plan is part of that policy recommendation. Whew. There was a lot of them. Okay. I would stand for any questions, or policy committee members, if you want to add anything more, feel free to add on to what I just summarized.
Thanks, Joe.
It was good discussion.
It was a really good meeting. Okay, hearing no questions, moving on to the revised 26-27 fee schedule.
The only change in here is that the federal rates were updated for our our lunch, and when we did our estimate, it was too low. So this brings it up to the standard that we're required to have.
Make a motion to approve. Rise to 637 schedule.
Motion by Thomas,
I'll second.
second by Jacob, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the joint powers agreement, police liaison office program.
So we had the sheriff here a while back to talk about supporting our school district for our school resource officer. This is the agreement that Stearns County has with all the school districts for the SRO services and support. One thing I will just add is that he was here today and was able to, he's been here this week, and he's starting essentially full-time in our district. He's out officing out of our district. So we have quite a bit, I guess, more presence than we're used to. So I think it's a positive change, but this is the recommended the joint powers agreement.
There are no questions or comments, looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Bruce. I'll second it. second by Cheryl, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the transportation contract.
So the transportation contract is presented. The board had conversation with the transportation company, and the recommended was recommended contract provision is 3% year one, 3.5% year two. We had a pretty extensive conversation about the increased costs of transportation, and 3.5 felt reasonable for the second year. So the recommended contract contains 3% year one and 3.5% for year two. And then you'll notice year three and year four are consistent as we've done in the past. Instead of locking in a contract for 4 years, having those 2 years, we know they will be our provider for 4 years, and then we'll meet to talk about the financial compensation for years 3 and 4.
Looking for a motion. Motion by Bruce, second by Jacob, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Did you
Get in
abstain?
trouble. Polls.
Ron abstained because he's, oh, that's perfect.
No, you're good.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Then moving on to the review of upcoming meetings. Okay. There are no comments on that. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Big motion.
Motion by Thomas.
Second.
Second by Gerald, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned.